Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you again today. It's already the second quarter. We're getting prepared. We're really getting our business rolling for 2024. First quarter was about setting it up. Second quarter is about how can we really maximize our profits. So when we're looking at different ways in our small business, what can we do to really get those profits? And today I think I've got a guest that's going to help us with that. And Jeremy, if you don't mind, would you share with our guest what problem will you help them solve today?
I hope I can help them solve a lot of problems, but my goal in working on this newest of my ventures is really to put money back on the table in where on the transaction side of people's businesses. So I think the one thing people get focused on is daily operations, and they lose sight of the small things that are running behind the scenes. And one of the biggest line items that we find is the cost for taking credit cards. And it's been a hot topic. You probably read some news over the last couple of weeks or months about Visa and MasterCard settlements and credit card processing fees being changed and some negotiation happening. And so I'm hopeful to really bring some transparency on that, because there's a lot to it and a lot to unpack. But the end result is to help people save money on their processing without making a lot of changes to the way they operate today.
This is going to be a great conversation because it's critical for small businesses, because now the majority, I don't know the numbers, but I bet it's over 90% that come in is through credit cards. So this becomes a big opportunity for you. So if you're listening today, we are speaking to you, the small business owner. And today I got with us Jeremy Lessaris. He's a serial entrepreneur, investor, and a former global marketing and communications executive. Over the past 2 decades, Jeremy has founded and led 8 of his companies to successful exits. Jeremy is currently the founder and CEO of Payment Brokers, a fintech company focused on AI-enabled cost reductions. And you kind of set that up, Jeremy, and I think this is so important because why don't you share with them really what is a payment broker, so they kind of get the understanding of that. They know we're talking about credit card processing, but I think it will help them really decide, really realize, how will this help me?
Yeah. So when I founded the company before, we were a traditional credit card processing company. We helped companies set up credit card systems and infrastructure for payments and integrate into their ERP systems or e-commerce systems. And I found that industry really bad. And the way that it operates from an acquirer and credit card processing perspective. So a couple of years back, I sold part of that company off, the assets out of it, and became something different. I had built a billing platform to be able to identify and charge for transactions. So every time you swipe a credit card, there's a fee that comes out from the merchant side, and that goes to the acquirer, the card issuer, and the card brand. And so that's called interchange. And then the credit card processing company, so the Fiservs and First Data and Global TSYS Elevons of the world, they also charge a fee above interchange. And they provide great services, right? There's security and compliance and regulatory things. They've made making payments seamless. It's been great. Like I love being able to go into a place and tap. Like it's frictionless for me to make payments now. So there's value in it. But what we found over the last couple of years is the way that they're operating and their agreements that every merchant in the US has signed is that they can change pricing at will, and in most cases with little or even no notice at all. And so when they gave the ability to do that, I understand why. There's new credit cards that come out, there's new technologies, there's security risks, there's all sorts of things that are changing at a rapid pace. So I understand the reason why they have to be able to change because their cost basis changes. What we found is that they don't do it in step. So Visa may charge a little bit more for a card. They'll add 20 basis points, 30 basis points. So 0.2 or more of a percent. And that continues to scale up. And so when you look at the cost of accepting a credit card today, we're seeing people paying 3 to 5% of a transaction. So then you started seeing companies, and you probably dealt with this. You go to a restaurant, and all of a sudden now they're doing something called steering or cash discounting. So there was a recent release where a settlement happened between Visa and MasterCard, and they said, hey, we're going to reduce your fees down, on the interchange side of the business by 4 basis points, which if anybody's doing math, this is like dollars. If you're doing millions of dollars in transactions, you're talking about dollars per month. It really is a very small amount. And so they've made that change, and they said, look, we're going to help people steer the transactions better so that you can give people, say, hey, I don't want to take your really high rewards card. I want to take this one. Otherwise, you're going to pay more fees. This is a massive problem. And so what we've done is build, of course, our commercial folks will call it AI, but it's really machine learning. We've taken a machine learning tool to look at a statement, which you can't read. Even if you're a forensic accountant, if you were tried to go through that thing, it would just be an absolute nightmare. And most companies will look at it and go, I don't know, it's like 3%. It's the cost of doing business, and they move on. And so we take that statement and break it down to identify the 1,500 different rates and fees that you're supposed to pay for, and find out what profit above is being paid to the processor. And we take that data to then help negotiate rates and fees with their existing provider. Because part of the headache of this is most people can't switch. They've got employees trained, they've got POS equipment, they've spent tons of money on terminals, so they just pay it. And every couple months, they get a 5 basis points here and 2 cents there. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up. And we've seen companies where I would call this predatory, 120, 140. So 1.5% more than what Visa and MasterCard charges is being charged to these merchants. You have a silent partner. And so I founded the company to help go after that money and use machine learning to do it, because there's no way we could do this manually. If we had to sit and review statements every single day for every company every month and monitor them moving forward, because what they tell you today, hey, we gave you a great price today, 2 months later, they change. And there's no way to track that. So trying to read this forensically every single month is just not something people can do. So that's really the crux of why we started Payment Brokers and what we do to help put money back to their bottom line without making impacts to their daily operations. No changing processors, no underwriting, no, like, I don't want people to leave who they're with. They're all equally bad.
Yeah. Well, and it's so important because, as I said, set it up because those becomes the bottom line that really flows to the profit side. Because right now they're using it, it's an operational expense, and they're just saying, oh, that's just part of what I have to do. What you're doing is giving a real opportunity for them to reduce cost, put it to where it needs to be, and hopefully the bottom line becomes the area that really comes in. Because right now, your credit card companies, and I've seen some of the headlines coming out, and I saw that, small amount that Visa, MasterCard, and the big win that came from this, well, they didn't give up much at all. They just kind of appeased the situation that was there.
It took 20 years to get there.
Yeah. So
So
let's talk
they've
about
made their money.
how can you do this for them? So share us with how that works. Is that how business owners can actually negotiate? Because what you're saying is a lot of times you never even have to switch them off of the platform they're on.
I don't want to switch people off the platform they're on. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't in this case, because they're all equally doing the same thing. So that doesn't mean that some of them aren't honest. There are plenty of companies out there that have maintained the rate that they had originally given you.
Right.
But remember, it's a cost plus model. And the cost side is so complicated that it's almost illegible to even the most talented financial person. So you can hand this to your CFO who's like, oh, I was a forensic accountant. I worked for one of the big four. And I can hand them a statement and they're like, I don't know how to read this. So the fact that we have small and medium business taking the brunt of what I believe is between 30 and $50 billion a year above the profit line. That means Visa, MasterCard's been paid, the issuer's been paid above interchange. I believe there's 30 to $50 billion, and most of that burden sits in the small to medium sized business bucket. So the way that we work is we take a copy of their statements, the detailed versions of them, we run them through a machine learning tool. Of course, we want to call it AI, but it's not. And at the end result is we can see what is interchange and what's above interchange. And what's above interchange, that proprietary data with a level of our knowledge base of where the profit lines need to be for them to accept it, we take that data back on the customer's behalf, because negotiation isn't as easy either. But companies will go, hey, let me call my credit card processor. I'm going to negotiate it. I got my fees down. Like, sure, like, congratulations. Like, they probably gave you a tenth of what we could have gotten had they been presented the data that we have. And then from that point forward, it's about monitoring. It's about keeping them honest, because they can change rates and fees at will without notice. And so when you have that ability, you have kind of a supply chain team that can help you do that. Most small to medium business, they don't have that capability. So we become a partner with them to do that on their behalf. And we only make money if we save money. So we split the savings with our customers. And we do it after the money's been recouped in totality. So the money's in your account and has been there for a month. And then we say, hey, look, this is what you saved. Here's a report. Here's a detailed analytical report showing transaction level records of where we saved that money. And we split that with you. And so it's really just a bottom line net positive result. It's been an amazing journey for me, but also randomly don't want to be on podcasts promoting it because I don't want the attention of processors finding out that this is what we're doing. But like I said, when you look at who it affects, it's where, when we talk about hyperinflation, now we can talk about steering. You've been to places and they're like, we'll give you a cash discount. So you pay cash. Otherwise, we're going to charge you 3%. Here's where that's even worse. Cash discounting is often the sales rep, the ISO, independent sales office, that's representing the processor. They're like, look, business owner, you don't have to pay $1. We'll charge your customer 3%. You don't even have to pay us. We'll charge them. And so they're like, what do you mean? I pay $0 for credit card processing? Yes. We no monthly fees, no nothing. You will just pass that 3% on. Then you look at the average cost of a transaction. If it's a debit card, the cost is 0.25%. So we're talking about adding 2.5% or more on top of what should have cost 0.25%. The average, and this is just from our knowledge base, right? I'm not saying this is everyone, but if you're paying more net effective, that means take the total of fees, you divide it over the total revenue that you've taken in credit cards. If it's above 2.3, you're probably paying too much. So that's a real cool tip for people that want to just look at it really quickly. So if you say that most people are paying 2.3 or 2.5%, and now we're paying 3, we're going to hyperinflate the market by by 50 basis points or 0.5% right out of the gate. So the second we allow steering to happen, this will become even further predatory, where they can charge whatever they want for processing, and the merchants are just going to say, well, we don't have to pay for it, so we don't care. So I think steering is a bad idea. And now a part of the, not regulation, but part of the settlement was that they're going to allow steering, where before they were trying to stop it from happening. Now I think they're like, oh, that makes sense. We'll just make more money. And everybody's fighting for your rewards. That's not the problem. The 2% I get in cash back is not the problem. The problem is above interchange. And like I said, I think it's a $50 billion a year problem that Doesn't affect Walmart and Target. It doesn't affect, massive companies. If I look at their statements, because I've looked at huge company statements, they pay $0 over cost because of they want the banking relationship. So JP Morgan Chase and others are like, hey, look, we'll give you interchange plus 0% over our cost, but you got to put your $1 billion of transactions with us. It's the small and medium business that doesn't have that power. And that's where we focus. We're not focused on Fortune 50 or even Fortune 500 for that matter. We're really focused on mom and pop and small to medium sized companies.
Well, that's why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because I know, it's Small Business Answer Man is the name of the podcast, because small business owners, here's how simple it is. All you got to do is get your statement out, and then Jeremy and them will take it from there. The nice thing is there's no cost for you to do that. Now, you've got to be doing some volume, if you're not doing enough volume and stuff, there's a challenge there because you've got to have that come in. But I think any business now, if they're doing any sort of business whatsoever, or is doing the volume because they're coming in on credit cards. So walk them through, Jeremy. If I grab my statement, I take a look at it, I can't understand that language because it's not my speak, then what do I have to do from there to be able to get you all to take a look at it?
So you can go on our website, ask to book a time with a rep. They'll do an analysis for you for free. We break it down into really understandable buckets and terms, and we find out what's on the table to be negotiated. Can it be negotiated? There are certain processors we can't help you with. If you're a small business doing $5,000 a month and you're using, Square, I can't help you. There are definitely some thresholds of negotiation, but I also see when you find companies that are using professional merchant account tools or e-commerce systems, and they're doing reasonable volumes, like a real business with reasonable volumes with 3 or 4 employees, you have to do a certain amount to afford to carry people. So I think once you get to that threshold, we can generally help. And if nothing else, we're just an advocacy for small business. So we may just say, look, we can't help you, but you're taking a ton of debit cards, go get a PIN pad and you're going to save yourself 1%. There's a lot of DIY things we can help with that you can just go do yourself. What I don't recommend is people try to negotiate themselves, because most people will go back and say, you know what, I could just do this myself. I'll just call my processor and say, hey, I heard this podcast, Gary told me to call you and say, I need a discount, and they'll do it. They'll say, hey, we don't want to lose your business. But what happens, and there's a formal process for this at most processors, they lock that rate in. So you can't call back a month later and negotiate again. And so the point of it is to get the most you can upfront, and then to monitor it to keep them honest on an ongoing basis, which means we would have to look at their statement. We push it into our system. It runs a machine learning to read all the transactions and identify what buckets they're get classified in. And then we can go back and take that data and get the most out of every transaction, which is, I hate to say that's our tagline now, but that's really what we're trying to do is like, look, this is a system that runs behind the scenes, and most people just chalk it up to the cost of doing business. There's a consumer side to this too. I mean, I was talking to a dentist. He's like, I'm just going to charge my customers another 20%. Like this is now getting carried on to the consumer side, and it's hyperinflating everything. So I'm trying to help both sides of the fence here. Like, let's get the cost down. So even if you still need to pass this on to the customer, in one way or another, it affects profit. So we know we're just going to raise our prices to adjust. That's how this works. So if that's the case, then I'm trying to help the consumer side too by reducing the fees. So, it's really, there's advocacy. There's a piece of this to us to help people from a DIY perspective. There's a lot of things we do, especially nonprofits. There's something called nonprofit interchange that a lot of companies haven't even applied for. So there's a lot that we can point people in the right direction, and we make $0 doing that. That's just from my side trying to advocate for small business, where our bread and butter is in the monthly continuous monitoring, because what we find is 4 times a year they change pricing, and we go back to the table and find more money for them. So that's really what we're all about.
Super. Well, the big thing is it's paymentbrokers.com. Want to share that. And that free analysis is, um, Jeremy said, is available to you. So please check it out. You got to know your volume and stuff. If you're not sure, just check with them. They'll let you know if you're eligible and stuff. But this is a huge one, folks. This is why it's so important that you take a look at it because this can affect your bottom line right away. And it's affecting your bottom line right now.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they're not charging anything to their customers and stuff. I know some businesses I see it's doing it. I will tell you, I'm going to reference this podcast whenever I get that now and say, I want to stop paying this because if you got a better fee, you could do that. So they have that capability that's there. So please check that out. Such a huge issue for small business owners. So don't take this lightly. I've got business owners on here. You may not be the one, then give them the information. All the information be in show notes of paymentbrokers.com and the free analysis and everything that's available for you. Before I let you go, Jeremy, because we're coming up that time, every time I get a great conversation, it goes really quick. You've done a lot of unique things, and you still look like a really young guy that
Thanks.
you started and exited 8 businesses. I want you to just share, you can't share the whole journey, but what's some of the lessons, maybe 3 lessons you learned along the way that you would share with our listeners as they're out there in their business? Because some of our small business owners, they want to scale their business to another level and maybe be able to exit their business. What's some of those lessons that you could share with them? That's a big topic, I know.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. For me personally, I think when I started my companies, it was all about money. It was all about profitability and revenue. And I was so focused on that piece of it. And I was in a survivalist mentality at the time. I was just trying to make ends meet and get by. And as I grew up in business, purpose became more important and alignment with how I wanted to live. So I think that's a huge piece of advice is to try to take the best pieces of your business and make them more in alignment with what your expectations of your future self, your future life, what you expect to end the chapter of your book with. If people focused more on that than and had some passion about what they were doing, it's a lot different than the daily grind. I think a lot of my companies, and when you hear 8 exits, I think that's a little glorified. I know I put it out there too, right? So not all of them are great. Like some of them were out of pure necessity. Like I couldn't afford to continue upholding the company. Now I was fortunate to exit, so they were still good in that I didn't completely shut the companies down to a degree where I made nothing, but some of them are at a significant loss of investment and capital and time and effort and energy. And I'm a bootstrap founder. So this wasn't like I went and raised somebody else's money and lost it. This was my hard earned money. So I would just say, scrutinizing the reason why you're doing it is a really big tip and lessons learned for me. I didn't do that early on. And now as I'm building companies like Payment Brokers, there was a purpose, something where I felt like I could add value in something that I enjoyed doing and I had a knowledge base and skill set for. Yeah. So if you could focus on that and that only, it would just be wildly successful.
That's great advice because it's really about the clarity that you need to have. And ultimately, my company name is Ascend Business Strategies, and it's for a purpose, to ascend to the top of the mountain. But my whole philosophy now is not to ascend to the top of the mountain by yourself. If you leave everything else below, your family, your friends, everything else, and you get to the top of the mountain, yeah, you may have success, but it's going to be pretty lonely up there. So what are you doing in those areas? And that's why I love masterminds and getting people to look at what do they want personally, because it will only drive you so far of being able to have that success in the business. And life goes so fast, as we all know. Time goes by very fast. As we age, it seems to speed up even more for me each and every year. So we've got to make those changes.
I'm feeling that, Gary. I'm feeling
it. You know that feeling too, right?
But I got to say, I wish I would have spent more time with other like-minded people earlier than I'm doing today. Like this is a journey for me to meet people. The reason I'm doing all these podcasts and talking to folks is I didn't do this earlier. I had my head down and I just grind out work. And when I look up, I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Am I going the right direction? And like two heads are better than one. And it's really great now to have people around that are like-minded, have similar directions and trajectories in life. And also just in general, I wish I would have invested in mentorship and guidance and masterminds earlier in my career, because it would have springboarded me so much further earlier. I just thought I could do this myself. I'm the right. I'm right in the direction I'm going. I made so many big mistakes.
Yeah.
like now I'm trying to give people mentorship just because I'm like, don't do what I did. It's not the right way to do it. It's, brute force 20 years or 30 years later. I would have much rather preferred the easier path.
Yeah, so true. And I didn't even set him up for that. But if you want to learn more about the Send Mastermind,
Yeah,
please check
not a
that out
sales rep.
because it's like-minded individuals. And Jim Rome said it, the five closest people that you're closest to, that's who you become. And you think all business, well, that you can become something different. You can become that well-rounded person, professionally as well as personally, and still have success professionally of doing the things you want. You can tell Jeremy is passionate about this and he's kind of changed that direction. It's now about helping others. Where in the beginning, I was the same way, Jeremy, is it was more about helping myself. But when I changed that tune, actually more success came from that part of it. And now, to be quite honest, the personal satisfaction comes because when they come back and employees tell you, wow, you made a big difference in my life, that really impacts you. Or the other people that you work with, some small businesses you work with, you're impacting them because could be $400,000 or $500,000 a month that you're saving them that now allows them to put back into their business. So appreciate you sharing that. Have one other questions and kind of falls with that same philosophy, but what would be your best advice that you would give the business owners, and kind of go different ways there, but you shared some already. But what would be another business advice you would give to small business owners to think about?
So I should be saying something about credit card processing, but I'm not going to. Um, it's the same thing. Don't forget where you came from, right? What drove you to do this? Don't trade time to go make more money so that money can buy you more time. Like I've heard 100 stories about this. I I think when your mission, and you hear about mission, vision, values, right? I see that all the time, but people forget like that. There's a reason for that. Like when your mission is clear and that mission comes from the voice of a customer or the gaps you've identified in a market, and you can honestly look at yourself and say that you can solve those challenges and that you enjoy doing it, that you feel like you have purpose in solving those challenges, that's something that brings you joy. All of the hurdles, all of the problems that we have, I look at people and how they react to problems, and I can see owners that are just frustrated, like freaking out and frustrated all day. They suffer through business. When you enjoy solving these problems, when it's a part of your purpose and passion, these things, these mountains become molehills, right? This is a thing for me personally, to enjoy what you do each day. When you can harness that and you make it in an alignment, which is what I was saying before, if you can align it with how you want to live in the end, if you're writing the book and you get to read the last chapter first, what does that say? To me, that's success. Not enjoying what you do, but having passion and purpose behind what you do. Personally, and this is just for me, I would buy anything from that company. And I can guarantee you can hire people faster, you'll have a better team culture, and you'll have raving fans as customers. I don't see another way to do it. And so when you can do all of those things, and it's a lot to unpack, that would be my number one piece of advice. Don't forget where you came from.
Great advice. I appreciate Jeremy sharing that. Remember, their website is paymentbrokers.com. He's on LinkedIn, Instagram. We'll have all that in show notes that you can get. My action item, always give them an action item, Jeremy. My action item, grab your credit card statement. Okay? It's probably not going to, you're not going to understand it all. check out payment brokers and go through the process if you feel like there's some savings to be done. If you're doing some credit card transactions, check out with his team about the free analysis and really dig into that, because that could be a cost savings to your business. And when you get done with it, let us know how that went, because we'll share that with others, because I'm going to be sharing this podcast with others that's there. So Jeremy, I thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, great to hang out.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us today, listeners. All right, this is all the time we have, but next time, go out there each day and continue to grow your business. Remember, don't ascend to the top of the mountain by yourself. When you help others achieve their success, you find significance in life. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.